So for 5 days, I had to be in this coffin, which is a meter by meter, without mattresses, without food, without water, without electricity, small holes in the ceiling of the solitary confinement, which was about almost 2 meters. The sounds of the shoutings and screamings of the prisoners who are under torture, and the sound of the interrogators and of the guards who are shouting and insulting the prisoners. In this situation, I had to continue fighting. I had to remind them always of my rights and to demand it with all the means I have. The history of Palestinian women movement actually started long ago, since the beginning of the 20th of this century, and it developed gradually, and it passed through critical stages. The war of 1948, how the Palestinian people were forced to leave their lands, their homes, and their country, how problems with the Palestinian people started, and of course women as an essential part of the Palestinian society had suffered a lot since 1948, and it was on their shoulders how to rearrange their lives again away from their homes as refugees, and how to raise their children, how to live as human beings. And this actually the problems and the situations of the Palestinian people had increased till we reached the point of 1967, where again the rest of our land was occupied by the Israeli occupation. This was again another critical point in the lives of the Palestinian people. Now that they have lost everything that they have, now that they have to face an oppressive occupier who doesn't care much about human lives, who doesn't care much about the aspiration of human beings as human. The policies that started at the same day with the occupation is confiscating lands of the Palestinians, trying to distort the Palestinian culture, depriving the peasants from their land and forcing them to work as daily wage workers in Israeli factories. And this actually had its effect on the women themselves. In our society, like any other society, women had to work in their homes and in the farmer around their houses. Now that the new situation had changed their life, they had to go outside their homes to work in Israeli factories and in Palestinian factories as well. This actually had changed the social and economic life of the Palestinian people, including the women themselves. And women started to enter new fields of life. For us, education was a strive against the occupation, since the occupation wants us people without culture, people without education, people without history and without future. This was a challenge for us as women and as people. So the number of women who entered school and who start to finish their higher education had increased. The number of women who are working in different fields and different areas had increased as well. And because of all the different problems that was raised by the situation of the occupation itself, socially, economically, nationally, and with other areas as well, women thought that they should do something. And since we used to have some kind of women's charitable society, they started to help supporting and assisting the needy families, families of martyrs, families of prisoners, and to try to give the woman more opportunities to work during or through training courses, sewing, embroidery, etc. In 1978, when we started our Palestinian Federation of Women's Action Committees, we thought that it's time for us as women to have a real grassroots united women's movement, aiming to raise the consciousness of women socially, nationally, and economically. So we started in March 78 under this slogan, and we start going and seeing women in refugee camps, in villages, and in the poor areas of the cities, to introduce ourselves and to introduce our program, which was concentrated on housewives and workers, because we felt at that time that these two main sectors are deprived of their minimum rights. How? Students, they go to their schools, They go to their universities, they have their student councils, they have their representative bodies. Workers, teachers and other professional areas, they have their own way of life. They are communicating with the society, they are doing something to the society. But these two sectors are really away from everything. The housewives are in their homes, only dealing with the problems of their children, of their house, of their little farm in front of the house, but they don't have any kind of communication with the outside world. Workers who have been deprived from their land, which was confiscated by the occupation, who have been living in a very deteriorated economic situation, had to take their responsibility and to go outside of their houses and to work in factories, either Israelis or Palestinian factories. And the situation of workers in the Israeli factories is a very terrible situation. The women face that she is suppressed as woman, and she is suppressed as Palestinian, and of course as a worker. So she has to deal with all these factors together. And who can take care of this situation? Trade unions. The general idea of trade unions in our society is that it's for men. And at that time, in 1978, it was in its beginning. And because of the social situation, women alone, women workers, cannot go to these trade unions by themselves. So, for these reasons, we thought that our aim and our goal is to try to meet these women, housewives and workers, and to introduce them to the world, and to introduce our program to them, because our program is actually to raise their consciousness and to work for their rights. So that's how we started in 1978, and with the achievements that we have started to gain. Like, for example, we have managed to have a survey on women's workers and illiterate housewife who doesn't have the opportunity to go to school. We came up to a result that 100 women, as a result of this survey, we've managed to recruit them to the trade unions, and we've managed to set up special committees for women's affairs within the trade union movement. And since 1981, when we've started to gain the accomplishments of our work, we can see now that we have leaders, women leaders from our members among the leadership of the trade union movement in the occupied territories. Actually, one of them is member in the executive committee of the General Federation of Trade Unions in the West Bank. Excuse me. And from the experiences that we had from the women in the refugee camps and in the villages, we started to learn from them what things should be done to them, what programs should be directed to them. And we came up in our second conference with a new program dealing with women's problems and trying to meet their needs, trying to organize them as a whole in the women's movement. And in brief, we can say that the programs directed to women varies from the educational level to the economic level to the social level, etc. So we have dealt with social problems, with education problems, with health problems. Now we have several clinics which was established by our federation, and we have several doctors, men and women, who are cooperating with us in this field. We have established nurseries and kindergartens because the occupation doesn't take care of our children. Actually, if we count the number of kindergartens that was set up by the occupation authorities, we can say that it's very rare and seldom. In our federation, we have 33 kindergartens and nurseries. And in other women's committees, they also have more or less the same number. So, in general, we can say that all of our program had stems from the need of the woman, and it was directed to the women themselves. We wanted to raise their consciousness socially and nationally, because we believe that both ways are important together. We don't say that we will solve our problems after liberation. This doesn't give us spread. What we are doing, we are fighting against the occupation, and at the same time, we are raising the women's consciousness for their basic issues. And that's how we've been doing, and how we are developing our program. In our internal life, we have introduced new concepts and ideas for the woman. Concepts for the future and for the present time. When we go to a village, we meet with a group of women, 15, 20, 25 women, and we talk about their problems, about their lives, about the occupation, all the things that matters their daily life. And we tell them that together, as women, as united women, we can build the future that we want. We can build the future for our children, for our people, and for us as women. And we tell them that we are not teachers for you. Education between us is reciprocal. You teach us and we teach you, and we together build the women's movement and build the future of our becoming state. And we tell them that in order to organize ourselves well, among you, as women of this village or that refugee camp, you have to elect a group of women between 5 to 7 to run your daily life and to be connected with us in the same area. For example, in Jerusalem, we have several villages, we have several refugee camps around us, and we have the city. All of the members spread around among these villages and refugee camps had to elect a group of women among themselves and had to be represented in the regional committee for the city and the villages around it. And in the occupied territories, we have 9 cities in the occupied West Bank, and we have around 5 regions in the Gaza Strip, all of them, most of them refugee camps. And from each place, from each local committee, someone is representing them in the regional committee, and from that regional committee to the executive committee, to the higher committee, to the general conference. So when we tell the women, elect a group of women to run your daily activities and to deal with your daily problems, we teach them a simple concept, democracy, how they can do their work by a democratic principle. And we give them confidence in themselves, for those who are to be candidates and for those who are going to vote for this woman or for that woman. And this comes from the basic committees, from the ground, and till we reach the executive committee, which is the body or the framework that deals with the daily problems of the woman in all the West Bank and Gaza Strip. That's our basic interest, is by doing a thing to attach it with another thing and to come up with a whole chain to close the circle. Working with the women, raising their consciousness together, learning from each other the experience that we have. And we know a very simple concept, that women, housewives, workers are the women who can teach us, who can show us the right way. It's not us from the city who got education from the university or from abroad are the ones to decide the future of the woman in the villages and refugee camps. And working in a very in different routes, but connected to each other, nationally, with the socially, with the educational, with all goes along each other. And we are proud as women that during the last 11 years, from 78 till now, 89, we have built a real woman movement. Because we have now gained the fruits of all the work and the effort that we have put during the last 9 years before the rising of the Intifada. And actually, this fact of organized women within the women's movement, and of course the different sectors of our people who have joined the student movement, the workers movement, and other kind of movements for teachers, for professionals. This what gave the Intifada its democratic and its grassroots organization. It's not spontaneous, it's an organized movement. And this brings us actually to talk about the Intifada and about the role of women in the Intifada. The Intifada wasn't a direct reaction to the spark that lit the actions or the first demonstrations in the Gaza Strip after the accident, the truck accident which had killed the 4 Gazan workers. It's the accumulation of 21 years of occupation, the accumulation of the continuous suppression, of the continuous deprivement of the Palestinian people from their rights. And as I said, all these grassroots organizations for all the sector of the people that had started to take their role to defend the rights of the different sectors, their daily life rights, and their together with their national rights. That's actually what made the Intifada to start and to continue and to increase, to accelerate. And that's what made the people more determined, other than any time, that this Intifada is going to lead us either to victory, to have our state, or to die before it. That's the conclusion that our people had reached. And among our people is we, the women, as an essential part of the society. It's very hard for me to express how we deal with the daily life during the Intifada. We are the more and most sensitive people to the results and to the policies and to the measures, the harsh measures of the occupation against our people. We, the mothers, the brothers, the wives, the children of the Intifada, we bear on our shoulders all the results. We are the ones to see our husbands and our brothers and our sons to be killed in front of our eyes, or to be arrested from to be taken to prison from our homes. We are the ones to see our children suffering from seeing their fathers or their brothers being beaten, sometimes to death, by the soldiers. And it's a very natural reaction. Our role is a very natural reaction. And taking into the consideration the the organized experience that the women went through since the past 10 years, we can say that the women are capable of taking this responsibility and to carry this flag till the end, till we gain our victory. So it's very obvious if the woman of a certain refugee camp or a village see soldiers barging into their villages or refugee camps or houses to defend themselves, to protect their lives, to protect the lives of their children, the lives of their husbands. So that's why they go to the streets. That's why they had to fight with the soldiers, and that's why they beat the soldiers and they take their rifles from them, because they have this internal feelings, and they have also the consciousness of what does it mean to have an occupation for the last 21 years. So they demonstrate in the streets. This barrier of fear from the soldier, from the weapons, had disappeared gradually and without too much thinking. Seeing the blood in front of me, I have to kill the one who's doing this to me. I am unarmed. I don't have anything in my hand. And seeing the occupier wants to take my life from me, I have the simple right to defend my life. And this is very well known and very realized by the whole civilized people in the world. So they demonstrate, they have solidarity among themselves, they collect money for the needy family, they have sometimes to build the houses which are demolished by the occupation. And they go to the prisons, in front of the prisons. They demonstrate there, and they are tear gassed by the soldiers, just because they want to see their children in the prison, to have their simple right as human beings to be able to see their sons for a few minutes. And by the experience that we have gained as women through the months of the Intifada, we had started to get involved in other kind of activities. Daily confrontation with the soldiers is one thing, but on the other hand, there is a life that has to be going on in our society, and that life should not be disturbed totally by the measures of the occupation. And we have learned from our experience and from our leadership, the National United Leadership of the Intifada, together with the PLO, that we are fighting in different fronts. And we should be able to tackle this problem, to deal with all these fronts. We know that the Israeli economy is tied very much to us. Our economy is attached to them, and our workers, and that's is very important thing. More than 150,000 workers are working in the Israeli factories. These are the men, the workers who are building the economy of Israel. And indirectly, all the products of Israel coming to our market and we consume it. So we realized where is the weak point here. They are annexing our economy to them, and they are dealing with they are building their economy on the shoulders of our workers. So the general strikes that's called upon by the national leadership of the Intifada is welcomed and is totally obeyed by the workers. And of course, if we want to harm their economy as well, we should have some alternative. And we should have our products as Palestinians. We have the capabilities. Our people is educated. As I said before, the education itself for us meant a great challenge. They are challenging with our future and with our history and culture, so we are challenging them to keep our culture and to educate ourselves. So we have the education, we have money, and we build our economy. That's what we started, how we started from the beginning. Of course, there are so many difficulties by the occupation. In the factories, in exportation and importing, all these things, we have different problems. But because we have this feeling of loving the life and to live as human beings, we have to fight. We have to fight all the problems and all the obstacles that put in front of us by the occupation. So we say we have different Palestinian factories that produce Palestinian products, and we want to encourage these to continue and to take the place of the Israeli products as alternative products. And of course, this didn't come through the history of the Intifada at one time, gradually. So because, as I said, we have wise leadership that takes, that studies the situation very well, and it takes the struggle step by step. So we, as women, thought, where is our goal in the economic front? We should have a role. We should start cooperatives, house products, house economy, as we call it. So we have some projects in the past as a federation. We have cooperative projects from the past, and we have built on it to meet with the new situation of the Intifada. So now we can see that the biscuit cooperation that we have in Abasan is developing. First, they were using their hands, and they were using very primitive means. Now they have electric machines. We have baby food product, which is a very simple composition between two main products that we have: wheat and hummus. What's hummus? With different proportion, we came up with a very nutritious baby food. instead of importing Cerelac or from the Israeli market, we have this, and it has nutrition, it has vitamins, it has different things, and it's cheaper. It's very simple, and through it you can put in work a number of women. And by developing this project, it can be spread nationally. Now we have people from abroad that are asking to have samples of these products. And we can see that people are entering new fields of cooperative products. As an example, the United Leadership, the National United Leadership had called to boycott any Israeli product that have a Palestinian alternative product. This comes to the dairy products, where we have Nova company, which is an Israeli company, that used to cover the whole occupied territories with its products. We have two Palestinian small-scale products of dairy, one in Jericho and the other one in Hebron. And they cannot cover and meet with the needs of all the people. So they have to increase the hours of their work. Instead of working 8 hours, they work 24 hours, different shifts, and they take new workers. But this also doesn't meet the need of the people. So our women in Gaza had thought, because in Gaza there is no Palestinian factory for dairies, so they thought that we have cows at home and we have sheep, goats. Why don't we start something collectively with the other women to have all these together and to start make dairies? And of course, by themselves, they cannot do something like this. They have to deal with professionals, and they have to have financial support. So they made a proposal for a project, and they have some kind of Palestinian European committee to help them raising fund for this project. But now, before we have to develop this project, now the products, before using the machines, before having this comprehensive project, now the products are spreading in the south area of Abasan, of Gaza Strip, and the reputation of the product and its quality is spread all over the Gaza Strip. And of course, we can have so many examples about such a thing. But the fact and the concept is we are building our economy. We are building the economy of our state. And that's how we are working, and that's how we will still working on. If we want to talk about personal experiences, about human beings who are living under this situation, who are living the Intifada, and of course living the daily measures taken against them by the occupation. There are tens and thousands, 10,000s of stories to be said. For my personal experience, I've been active in the student movement, and I've been active in the women's movement. And for the last 14 years, I've been dealing with different kind of measures. And of course, this didn't stop me from fighting for my own and my people's liberation. Myself as a woman, and together with the other women and the whole Palestinian people. I've been 4 times under town arrest as a result of being active in the women's movement, in the Palestinian Federation of Women's Action Committee, and the Democratic Youth Organization. And during the months of the Intifada, of the 22 months of the Intifada, I've been suffering daily by the measures of the occupation. I was arrested twice at the beginning of the Intifada for 1 week, and then in April '88 I was arrested for 3 times, together with my husband and my sister-in-law. At that time, I felt very strong, facing the interrogators and facing the whole ideology of the occupiers. This gives you strength and gives you the aspiration and the determination to defeat your occupier. Of course, this strength that I had facing all the torture, psychological and the physical and the emotional torture, I have to repeat this sentence again. No, just remind me of, it's all the prison time.
Yes. You were saying the strength that you had to survive the torture.
Didn't take away my feeling towards my children and towards my husband, who was somewhere next to me, but I didn't know where. With all the threats that I used to hear from the interrogators, that I won't be able to see my kids again, and that I won't be able to see my lawyer, my husband, and they're going to deport him and to deport me after him. All this situation that lasted for 25 days continuously in solitary confinement, facing the ugly face of the occupier minute after minute, and striving at that hard time and fighting to get my rights as prisoner and as Palestinian. For 25 days, I didn't have the chance to see the kids, to hear anything from what's going outside, from what's going just next few meters next to me. I had to fight for simple human rights, to have proper food, to have the chance to wash myself, to change my clothes, to have the chance to have toilet papers, to have the chance to smell fresh air for a minute. For 5 days I was kept in a very small, tiny solitary confinement. We called it the coffin, because there are too many kinds of solitary confinements with different sizes and different conditions. It depends on the interrogator and the stages of interrogations, when he wants to put you on this solitary confinement and when he wants to put you on the other solitary confinement. So for 5 days I had to be in this coffin, which is a meter by meter, without mattresses, without food, without water, without electricity, small holes in the ceiling of the solitary confinement, which was about almost 2 meters. The only thing that you can hear in the interrogation section is the sound of the keys for these solitary confinements, a huge big keys. The sounds of the shoutings and screamings of the prisoners who are under torture, and the sound of the interrogators and of the guards who are shouting and insulting the prisoners. in this situation, I had to continue fighting. I had to remind them always of my rights and to demand it with all the means I have. And of course, in the interrogation section, you are deprived of everything, from even your watch. You don't keep track of the time. But I have to fight. And I started first to shout at the guards when I wanted to go to the toilet, because of course I was deprived of this little simple thing, going to the toilet. And I can see from the condition of this coffin that all the prisoners has to do it in the same coffin. Seeing this condition, I insisted that I have the right to go to the toilet. So I kept shouting and screaming to get my rights. But of course, they didn't listen. So I started singing in a very loud voice, continuously, and to encourage the other prisoners around me from different ages. You can see 13, 14, 15. From their voices you can hear if they are kids, if they are children, or if they are young youth. And because I started to sing and I started to make some kind of riot inside the prison, they allowed me after 5 hours to go to the toilet. And the same thing I did to get my food in this coffin and to get water in this coffin. But of course I couldn't demand a mattress because the place was so close. So I had to sleep like this all the time in a very tiny cement chair. But of course, by the hours and by the time you get tired of sleeping like this. So I used to stand up, and I used to sleep standing up and hitting this wall and hitting the door, and it was very terrible hours. But the things that give you confidence and the things that give you strength is that you are together with other prisoners and you have to do something in this situation to make the others steadfast in this confrontation. So I always started to encourage them to fight the soldiers and to fight the guards and to fight the interrogators. And to hear the news from the newcomers, to hear the new news of the Intifada outside, because this was the main thing that concerned all the prisoners in the interrogation section, because they've been away for long. So any newcomer, we feel that he is coming next to us, we start shouting and asking, what's happening, what's here, what's there? And we start to spread the news all over. And my story is very similar to other stories of other women and other men who've been into this same experience. During the interrogation time, The main issue that they were discussing with me is the political situation. What do I believe is the solution? What's going to happen in the Intifada? Of course, at the beginning they wanted to show me their muscles and they wanted to show me that they are very clever and they know that the Intifada is going to pass away, it's going to end. And it's not we, the Palestinians, are making this Intifada. It's their soldiers in the streets. They are giving the international world opinion the scene of the Intifada. So of course, I said my opinion very openly. I said that I am, as a Palestinian, I am as a part of this courageous people, do believe that the PLO is our sole and legitimate representative, and that the national leadership of the Intifada is our leader in the occupied territories, and the Intifada is going to last. It's not your soldiers who are making this Intifada, it's us, the people, and our children are going to show you a lesson of courageous and a lesson in how to respect the human rights. So actually they didn't have any, at the beginning of the charge, they didn't have any specific, in the beginning of the interrogation, any specific charge against me. They just wanted to talk politics. And of course, talking like this, they were saying that it's finished for us as a family. The members now will be spread it all over. You will be in jail for the rest of your life and your husband is going to be deported. Or no, we will deport you after your husband and we will leave your kids here. Different stories. This shows actually how weak is the occupation, how strong we as people. For the last 22 years, months of the Intifada, they've been arresting thousands of people and hundreds of women who have been in and out. But the Intifada is still going on. And the interrogators are keep telling their stories all over once and again. And we know that we are stronger than them. Even we are in the interrogation section, even we are in prison, but we are stronger than them because we have right. We have a national and human right, and they don't have any right. The occupiers doesn't have any right in our land, and that's why we are stronger. And by all the means that they have, the prisons, the arms, the support of the USA with the tear gas bombs, with all the arms that they have, with all the technology that they have, we are stronger than them. And as we say it always, we are excuse me, I have to translate it. are not weaker than the Vietnamese people, and Israel is not stronger than the Americans in Vietnam. That's what we always say, and that's the aspiration and the hope we are working for. Now, after 1 year of the order of actually the 14 months of the order of deportation of my husband, they've deported him, finally. After a very strong and continuous campaign through the Committee of Families of Deportees that we women had established to defend our human rights as Palestinian and as human beings. I was in prison when I heard that my husband had this order of deportation. It was my daughter, my 4 years old daughter at that time, who told me that my husband, her father, is going to be deported. I cried on the visit. But while crying, I was also very strong. I told my daughter that he's going to be deported only for few time, and he's going to come back because we are going to get our victory, and he will return with the others. As I said, it's very hard on humans, on human beings, how to bear all these measures. But it's the struggle in the human being, the contradicting struggle. When you have this human feeling of being suppressed, and you have this strength at the same time. Because we are humans, we can feel these contradictions. We can feel that these feelings, what makes us human being, contrary to our occupiers. For my kids, my children is like any other child, any other Palestinian child. They had suffered. But I still say that there are children who suffered more than my children. There are more Palestinian children who had went through more terrible experience than my children. That's how we get our strength, not myself, but all of our people. And there is a say in Arabic. We say, لما تشوف مصيبة غيرك بتهون عليك مصيبتك. This means that when you see the problems of other people, your problem will get smaller. And that's what we always, how we always keep our strength and our determination. A child who lost his father in front of his eyes is suffering more than a child whose father was deported. And this child whose father was deported is suffering more than that child his father is in prison for 10 years. And that child his father is in prison for 10 years suffers more than that of his father had administrative detention for 6 months or for 1 year. So that's how the people react to all these measures. That's how I react, and that's how the people react here. We always tell ourselves that we should be patient. We should be patient. Victory is few meters away from us, and we have to have more efforts, more unity, more attachment to each other, to have more solidarity between each other to reach that victory. And as I said, this personal story of myself is only a reflection of hundreds and thousands of stories of other women. And as we say always that our story here is just similar to any story all over the world. All the revolutions, Vietnam, Cambodia, South Africa, Algeria, Nicaragua, in all places, all the people who are fighting for their freedom and all the people that got their freedom and liberation had went through or had still going through the same stories. And because they were determined, because they had the faith in their future, they had succeeded. And that's how we feel. We want to live in peace. But peace and occupation doesn't, this equation is not right. And it has to be broken. The Israelis say we want peace, but what kind of peace they want? They want elections. We want elections. We want free and democratic elections, like any other civilized nation. But how can people have elections while they are under occupation, while there are weapons directed to their heads? The Americans had their elections a few months ago, almost a year ago. It's a very simple question just directed to these people. How did they use their right of elections? How did they elected President Bush? This is a very simple. We want this kind of elections. We want the candidates to be have free election campaigns. We want the army outside of our land. And we want our national basic human rights that all the nations of the world except USA and Israel is accepting. The Intifada has changed a lot in the international world's opinion. And more countries now had accepted this concept of international peace conference, which was declared through the the Palestinian Peace Initiative in Algiers last November. And that's what we want. We want peace, but we want freedom and we want liberation. We are the people who are suffering and under daily stress and pressure. We are looking for peace, but peace with dignity, peace with human rights, peace with national rights and liberation. That's what we want. And for the Israelis, we tell them that the Palestinian Peace Initiative is a very objective and has life and future in it. The elections, the Shamir election plans, has its concept of peace from the point of view of the occupier. And as I said, peace and occupation cannot go together. We want peace and we want to exercise our national rights as Palestinian people. We want to have our liberated state. We want to have a flag and we want to have a Palestinian identifications. And foremost, we want our children, my children and others' children, the children of our people, to live like other children in the world. It's very simple. And as I said, for any civilized people, this has meaning and this has sense. It's for those who doesn't want to see the future as human beings. For them only, I mean for the Israeli government that's backed and supported by the government of the USA, for those people, we can assure them that the peace in their conditions and the peace they want cannot happen. The peace that we want and all of the world, all the people of the world and all the countries, the majority of the countries of the world have supported us in this. The peace in our Palestinian state, in our liberated Palestinian state, led by the PLO as our sole and legitimate representative. Thank you. It's funny. Okay, since the beginning of the Intifada, the Israeli government thought that it's simultaneous. It's going to end after 2 weeks. We will be able to put an end to this Intifada. But later on, while the Intifada is going on and on, they start to use different measures, step by step. At the beginning, it was mass killing. After the 4 Gazan people, the 4 workers in Gaza, martyrs in the Gaza Strip had fell one by one daily. And the Intifada had spread it from one village to another village, from one city to another city, till it covers the whole occupied territories. And then they said, how can we deal with such thing? by bullets, by live ammunition, they've used it. And it didn't stop the Intifada. By collective arrest, they started to arrest thousands and thousands of people. And the Intifada didn't stop. So they thought, oh, we have this weapon of deportation to expel the leaders of the Intifada. So in January, they deported, January 88, they'd start their policy of deportation. They thought that by deporting the leaders, they will put an end to the united leadership of the Intifada. They thought it's only the Intifada of number of persons sitting I don't know where. So they start deporting, but the Intifada is still going on. And the scale of this deportation policy has continued. The latest list of deportation which was issued in July 88 included 25 persons. First they start with 4 and 10, so by the end it came to 25 persons. And my husband was among the previous list, which included 10 persons in July the 7th. But when they saw that this policy didn't achieve what they want, they put the leaders in prison and they deported them, and the Intifada is going on. For the case of my husband, it lasted almost 14 months, for a year, sorry. And it was very difficult for the Israelis to keep going with this policy while the whole world is condemning this policy. Of course, it wasn't like this. It wasn't a gift from the occupation. We had to fight for this. We, through our Committee of Families of Deportees, we had started a campaign, international campaign, and a campaign within the Israeli community itself, within the Peace Now and human rights organizations and those groups against occupation. And it was hard for them to keep going with this policy because of the opposition, the international opposition. But from the other hand, there were sounds and voices within the Knesset itself, within the Israeli parliament itself, that calling for continuous deportation and for transfer. So the government, which more than half of it is part of this rightist and fascist wing in Israel, is going, of course, to continue this policy and to turn their back to the whole world. We were hoping through our continuous fight against the deportation that the Israeli government will have a sense, and as they say, they are a democratic state and they are civilized people. Okay, they have to listen to the civilized people, to the democratic people in all of the countries who are calling them to stop this policy.